I have cancer, but I found out that my wife was cheating on me, so I transferred my inheritance to. On November 5th, I received the news I had feared the most. Every test confirmed the diagnosis: advanced stage 4 pancreatic cancer. In essence, this will be my final holiday season. Strangely enough, I feel an odd sense of acceptance. I've led a fulfilling life, and my loved ones will be looked after. Being a naturally reserved person, I hadn't mentioned anything about the test to my wife, Emily. I didn't want to alarm her until I had definitive answers. I returned home early to have the necessary conversation. This was something I didn't want to handle over a phone call or text message. As you might have guessed, since I'm sharing this now, my life took a turn in more ways than one that day. When I pulled into the driveway, I saw the ostentatious, pricey car of one of my business associates, James, parked there, adorned with his customized license plate. This was highly unusual. I accessed our home surveillance system on my phone and saw it was set to privacy mode, not recording. I decided to leave it alone and drove off to our countryside property to clear my thoughts. Our security system is mainly for protection, and I seldom check it unless there's a specific reason. However, I also enjoy watching the wildlife on the exterior cameras and find it soothing to watch storms approach. For my own entertainment, I had set up an additional video recorder to archive the footage to local storage, which isn't accessible through my phone. When I arrived at the countryside house, I opened my laptop and reviewed the other server to verify what my instincts were already telling me, and sure enough, there they were, Emily and James, cozying up in the living room, sipping wine, dancing, and then heading upstairs to the bedroom. Apparently, they left the doors open because the microphone captured their activities once they were out of the camera's view. With the limited time I have remaining, I wanted to know the truth, but I didn't want the upheaval of a confrontation and divorce. Call me a coward if you like, but all the affection and dedication I had for her vanished that day. I experienced all the emotions you'd expect, but I know it's not my fault. I've been a devoted, loving, and attentive spouse. Now I'm focusing on myself and what truly matters to me. I contacted my attorney, and we reviewed my will and prenuptial agreement. I explained the situation to him, and we started working on determining how long and to what extent this affair had been happening. What we discovered was unsettling. Either I never truly knew the woman I spent over 20 years with, or something in her had dramatically changed. For now, I'm not disclosing anything to my children or Emily. We never had kids together, but I have children from a previous relationship. I'm going to put on a brave face and get through the holidays, giving my children and grandchildren one last holiday memory with me. I'll be the doting father and grandfather and try to play the role of a loving husband. Some background for those wondering. Emily's affair partner, James, is a widower and hasn't remarried. He's a business partner, but not a personal friend. I don't mix business with friendship. I never married the mother of my twins, Jessica. It was her choice, and I agreed with her that it was the right decision at the time. Jessica married a wonderful man named Michael when the kids were 7. They never had children together. I got my act together when the kids were 3 and have been very involved with them since. That's when I started becoming the father I wanted to be. Jessica, Michael, and I are all in our late 50s. Emily is almost 55, and James is in his early 50s. Emily and I are both in our first marriage. We were in our early 30s when we got married. Now, as I face my final days, I'm thankful for the life I've led and the people I've cherished. They continue to keep my family close and treasure these last moments. The twins are now in their 30s, and all the grandkids are teenagers or older. Every year, Christmas is a 10-day celebration. We spend the period from Christmas Eve through January 2nd at the farm. We cut down a tree together after everyone arrives, then decorate, cook, play games, and celebrate as a family. Laura and her husband John have been part of this tradition since I bought the farm. I remain committed to not telling anyone about my diagnosis until after the new year. If I told Laura, she wouldn't be able to keep it in, and I don't want to put John in a position where he has to lie to his wife. I want the kids and grandkids to enjoy the week. We'll have plenty of time to grieve and prepare in a few weeks. Emily's presence this week will just be a minor detail in the long run. Frankly, I don't care about her nearly as much as the rest of the family. The financial situation is quite interesting. Emily and I met and got married after we were both well established in our careers in finances. She had a good job with a great pension and 2 inheritances in a trust. Early on, we agreed, at her insistence, not to disclose our entire net worth to each other. We also have a prenuptial agreement where any property or trusts owned prior to the marriage remain individual property during and after the marriage. I felt that was odd, but I didn't care at the time. I had my own assets, and my kids were the primary beneficiaries. I've done well in my career, and after we married, I was able to start the trust. The trust is managed by myself and a trustee. It was set up so that the income is for me, and any proceeds from the principal could only go to my children. My grandkids can only get funds from the principal after they turn 30. This was all set up before Emily and I got married. A few weeks ago, I announced my retirement from the nonprofit where I worked. Knowing what I know now, I noticed Emily seemed a bit uncomfortable. I can guess why. I'd be around more often. Tomorrow is my last day of work, and then I'll be focusing on spending time with my family. I gave the camera server info to my lawyer and granted him access from his office. So I don't know if Emily and James have had any more activities, but I assume they have. At this point, I don't care. I know who I am and what I'm worth, and James isn't even in the same league as me. Emily hasn't said anything that would lead me to conclude that she knows I know. I'm not proud of this, but I still sleep in the same bed with her. I've been selfish with her lately. I feel like I'm using her, but she's apparently been using me for at least the better part of this year. I'm not as honorable as many of you have made me out to be. I hate this small amount of deceit. So don't worry about Emily getting everything because she won't. The trust is in great hands. Thanks to your comments, I've made a few adjustments to it to prevent any attempts by Emily to challenge it. I'm going to remove myself as a trustee and have a lawyer take my place. The process has started and should be complete by the end of the week. The week with the family has been wonderful. In spite of everything, this has been one of the best Christmases in recent memory. We got snow on Christmas Day, and the grandkids were able to go sledding. Emily seems to be acting a bit distant, but that could be due to the fact that I've not been as attentive as usual. But who cares? I did notice that she has been spending more time on her phone and sneaking off to make calls, which didn't go unnoticed by my daughter. The first couple of days, the week seemed to take a toll on her. It's funny how when you know something, a person's actions make more sense. She was secretive about her phone and stepped out of our family gatherings to get some air quite a few times. The best was when she needed to run into town, and one of the grandkids wanted to go with her. The mental gymnastics she did to avoid taking the grandkid were almost comical. I have to admit, I played along a bit by asking why not. So the affair is continuing. With me now retired, she's been going to work less and less, and not going in at all some days, and not telling me a thing about her day, which is fine in my book. I've been preparing to execute the next phase of my plan. I've decided how I want it managed. I'll drop myself to a one trustee. The twins will get the majority of the trusteeship, and the 4 grandkids will make up the rest. Laura and John will act as proxies for the grandkids. As each grandkid turns 21, their trusteeship will transfer from Laura and John to them. If a fraction is left over, Laura gets the extra share. I planned a meeting with the kids, Laura and John, for next week. I plan on telling them everything then. They have to sign documents, and we will proceed with changing the trusteeship. I didn't include Emily at all. My soon-to-be ex-wife will be out in the cold. I have a meeting scheduled with my oncologist after the new year. I've been putting it off as I didn't want to hear any bad news during this week. In the meantime, I'm in no pain and have no physical problems. The stress of keeping the secret has been hard, but I'm handling it. I've been getting a lot of messages about exposing Emily to the family. I understand the sentiment, but I'm not that kind of person. We'll see how things go over the next few weeks. I feel the kids would react badly to Emily if I told them about the affair, and I don't want that kind of drama right now. I'm trying to focus on the positive and make the most of the time I have left. I know that some of you may disagree with my approach, but this is what feels right to me. This week was so important to me. It was the last time I could be with all of them for an extended period. I'm thinking of a small trip for myself. We'll see. I plan to spend a day one-on-one with each child and grandchild. That's my next goal. I had my lawyer, a notary, the twins, Laura and John, over to my farm today. The tasks I needed to complete are done, and this process has gone about as well as it could have. Understandably, the twins were a bit upset that I hadn't told them sooner, but they understood. I explained my reasons, and they agreed to keep it quiet for now. We signed all the necessary documents, and the trust is now fully in their hands. I feel a weight lifted off my shoulders knowing that everything is taken care of. My daughter was the first to break the silence. It was more like a stream of consciousness than a question. As soon as she stopped, I started with my health. I explained my diagnosis. I listened to them, making plans on how we were going to fight this. This is where I stopped them. I explained the odds. I told them I had already gotten a second opinion, and that the prognosis was the same. I told them I wanted to spend my remaining time enjoying life and not undergoing painful treatments that would only prolong my suffering. They were understandably upset, but they respected my decision. We spent the rest of the day talking about the future. I told them about Emily's affair and how I had handled it. They were shocked and angry, but I asked them not to confront her. I didn't want my final days filled with conflict. I wanted peace. They agreed to keep it between us and focus on the time we have left together. I explained my philosophy of personal finance, something they've heard many times before and taken to heart. I told them that I lived off the trust all these years. I put them through college with that trust. I made time in my life for them with that trust, and I was able to work for a nonprofit basically for free because of that trust. I explained that I wanted to give back and make a difference in the world, and I was able to do that because of the financial security the trust provided. They understood and were grateful for everything I had done for them. I was surprised by a visit from one of Emily's girlfriends. She's about the same age as Emily. Her name is Carol, and she was with Emily last week on their girls' night out. In fact, the girls' night was at Carol's house. If you've read my comments, you'd know that last week Emily came home very intoxicated. She used a rideshare. Carol told me that during their girls' night, Emily had confessed to the affair and that she felt guilty. Carol said that she felt I deserved to know. I told her that I already knew and thanked her for telling me. Carol expected me to be devastated, but I surprised her by telling her I already knew. I asked her who else was around when Emily made this confession. Carol was the only other person in the house. I asked if she had told anyone else. That offended her. She told me she wouldn't spread something like that before telling me. I apologized and explained that I didn't want to cause any more drama. I assured her that I was handling it in my own way. She understood and offered her support. I decided to confront Emily. I arranged for us to have dinner at our favorite restaurant, and after dessert, I told her that I knew about the affair. She tried to deny it, but I told her that I had proof. I gave her an envelope with the divorce papers and told her that I wanted her to sign them. I told her that I didn't want to spend my remaining time fighting and that I wanted a peaceful end to our marriage. She was shocked and started to cry, but I remained calm. She asked me how long I had known, and I told her that it didn't matter. I said I wanted her out of the house by the end of the week and that we would split our assets according to the prenup. She begged me to reconsider, but I stood firm. I left the restaurant and went back to the farm. I felt a sense of relief knowing that I had taken control of the situation. Emily has been trying to contact me, but I've been ignoring her. I've been spending time with my children and grandchildren and enjoying the peace of the farm. I know that she is upset, but I don't feel any sympathy for her. She made her choices, and now she has to live with them. I've also heard that James is having problems at work. Apparently, his reputation has taken a hit due to the affair. I'm not losing any sleep over it. Emily showed up at the farm unannounced. She wanted to talk. I told her that there was nothing left to say. She begged me to give her another chance, but I told her that it was too late. I asked her to leave, and when she refused, I called my lawyer. He advised me to get a restraining order if necessary. I hope it doesn't come to that. I've been focusing on my health and enjoying the time I have left. I've been spending time with friends and family and making the most of every day. I've also been working on letters and videos for my loved ones to be given to them after I'm gone. I want them to know how much they mean to me and that I love them dearly. Carol has been a great support. She visits often, and we have become good friends. I'm grateful for her kindness and understanding. She has been a bright spot during this difficult time. Social Roots will soon know about both the breakup of my marriage and my diagnosis. I will have an endless stream of people wishing me well. I knew I couldn't delay it forever, but I don't want to be treated differently. However, life is what it is. I've heard that Emily and James are now together. I wish them well. I have no ill will toward them. I'm at peace with everything and focusing on the time I have left. The company is doing well, and the twins are handling things admirably. I'm proud of them, and I know they will continue to do great things. I've had quite a few friends and acquaintances stopping by. Someone mentioned a living wake, and I think this is what they meant. I'm encouraging anyone to come out and see me. I like spending time with these folks, even if it might be the last time we meet. I'm feeling weaker these days, but I'm still in good spirits. I know that my time is short, but I'm grateful for the life I've had and the people I've known. Emily tried to visit me in the hospital, but I refused to see her. I want my final days to be peaceful and surrounded by those who truly care for me. I've made all the necessary arrangements, and I'm ready for whatever comes next. I want to thank everyone who has supported me during this time. Your kindness and understanding have meant the world to me. Remember, none of us are promised tomorrow. Know that life is precious and cherish every moment. Be good to yourself and those around you. I hope none of you have to walk the same path that I did. But if you do, know that you are not alone. My father passed away peacefully at the farm, surrounded by family. We held a memorial service and spread his ashes on the land he loved so much. We will miss him dearly, but we are comforted knowing that he is at peace. We are moving forward as a family and honoring his legacy. We will always remember his wisdom, kindness, and love. He was a great man, and we were lucky to have him in our lives. After my father passed away, life at the farm changed. But the sense of peace he had found during his last days lingered with us. The entire family came together to mourn, but also to celebrate the life he had lived. The grandchildren, now teenagers or older, were struck by the strength and dignity with which he had faced his final days, and they looked up to him as a source of inspiration. We held a memorial service on the farm, just as he had wished, and his ashes were spread during the spring planting, becoming part of the land he had cherished for so many years. Emily was noticeably absent at the memorial, as we had arranged for security to ensure she couldn't attend. My father had made it clear in his last days that he wanted peace, and that meant keeping her away from the family. In many ways, she had already left our lives, and her presence was no longer relevant to us. After all, my father's true legacy wasn't his marriage to Emily. It was the family he had nurtured, the children and grandchildren who would carry on his values and memory. In the months that followed, we began to settle into our new roles as trustees of the family estate and the company my father had built. The trust was now in the hands of my siblings and me, and we worked closely with the lawyer to ensure everything was managed as my father had intended. The grandkids were beginning to understand their responsibilities as they approached adulthood, and we could feel my father's influence guiding us every step of the way. As for Emily, it didn't take long for her to show her true colors once again. After my father's passing, she tried to contest parts of the will, claiming that she was entitled to more than the prenup allowed. But the ironclad legal agreements my father had put in place ensured she wouldn't be able to touch the family's wealth. She eventually sold the house in town and moved away, leaving behind the life she had once shared with my father. It was clear that her motivations had always been selfish, and we were glad to have her out of our lives for good. James, the man she had been having the affair with, didn't fare much better. His business dealings had already been faltering when word got out about the affair. Investors began pulling out of his projects, and soon enough, his financial situation crumbled. He tried to raise funds to salvage his company, but no one was willing to take the risk after his personal life became public knowledge. The downfall of his business was swift, and he had no one to blame but himself. The farm, on the other hand, became a symbol of resilience and continuity. We decided to honor my father's dream of having the family live together on the land. Over time, we built homes for each of us on the property, creating a small, close-knit community. The grandchildren, who had always loved spending holidays at the farm, now had the chance to grow up there, surrounded by family and the values my father had instilled in us. One of the most profound changes came in the form of Carol, Emily's former friend. After my father's passing, Carol became even more of a fixture in our lives. She had been a steady presence during his illness, and her loyalty and kindness didn't go unnoticed. It became clear that she had been more of a friend to my father than to Emily, and we welcomed her into the family. My father had even left her a small share in the trust, which ensured she would be taken care of as he had wished. Over time, Carol became like an honorary aunt to the grandchildren, and she continued to support us as we navigated life without my father. As the years passed, we found solace in the routines my father had established. Every Christmas, we continued the tradition of gathering at the farm for the 10-day celebration. The family cut down the tree, cooked together, and played games just as we always had. Though my father was no longer physically present, his spirit lived on in every moment we shared together. My siblings and I often reflected on the lessons my father had taught us about life, love, and loyalty. His decision to quietly confront Emily's betrayal without causing upheaval had shown us the importance of maintaining dignity and focusing on what truly matters. In the end, my father had chosen peace, both for himself and for the family he loved. We still visit his favorite spots on the farm, the place where he used to sit and watch the sunset, the fields where he had walked the fences, and the tree he loved to sit under during quiet afternoons. These places remind us of him, and we feel a deep connection to the land that was such an important part of his life. As for me, I've taken up the responsibility of running the farm and the company, knowing that my father trusted me to carry on his legacy. It's not always easy, but every decision I make is guided by the values he instilled in me. I've come to realize that, in many ways, my father prepared us for this moment long before we ever knew it was coming. His foresight, his generosity, and his love have ensured that we'll be all right, even without him here. And so, life goes on at the farm. My father's presence may have faded, but his influence remains, woven into the fabric of our lives. Every sunrise and sunset reminds us of him, and every new season on the farm is a testament to the life he lived and the family he cherished. As for Emily and James, they are but a distant memory now, a reminder of what could have torn our family apart, but in the end, only made us stronger. We've chosen to focus on the future, on the family that remains, and on the legacy my father built. That, above all else, is what truly matters. After my father's passing, the farm became a place of healing and reflection for all of us. The first few months were difficult, adjusting to life without him and processing the grief. But as time went on, the family began to settle into a new rhythm, guided by the values and lessons my father had instilled in us. As the executor of his estate, I took on the responsibility of overseeing the trust and ensuring his wishes were carried out. The transition of control over the family assets went smoothly, and the family business was handed over to my siblings and me, just as my father had planned. The grandkids, now old enough to start learning about their future roles, were beginning to understand the importance of the legacy left behind. One of the most important steps I took after his passing was finalizing the legal matters surrounding Emily. Despite her attempts to contest the prenup and seek a larger share of the estate, she was unsuccessful. My father had taken every precaution, and his ironclad legal agreements made it impossible for her to claim anything beyond what had been legally allocated to her. In the end, she sold the house in town and disappeared from our lives, just as my father had wanted. James, her affair partner, didn't fare much better. His reputation in the business world had already been damaged, and after word of the affair spread, his financial backers abandoned him. His company crumbled, and his personal life seemed to follow the same downward spiral. While part of me had wanted to see some form of justice, I realized that both Emily and James had already faced the consequences of their actions. My father's quiet resolve in handling the situation with dignity had taught me that sometimes the best course of action is to simply let things unfold as they will. The farm became more than just a place of refuge. It became a symbol of unity for our family, my siblings, and I decided to honor my father's dream of having the family live together on the land. Over the course of the next year, we built homes for each of us on the property. The grandkids, who had always loved spending their holidays at the farm, now had the opportunity to grow up there, surrounded by family and the values that had been passed down from my father. During that first Christmas without my father, we carried on the traditions he had started. We cut down a tree, decorated it together, cooked, and played games, just as we always had. There was a quiet sadness in the air, but also a sense of comfort. It felt as if my father was still with us in spirit, watching over his family as we gathered for the holidays. Carol, who had been a close friend of my father's during his illness, remained an important figure in our lives. She had been a source of strength and support during the difficult times, and over the months, she became like family. My father had left her a small share in the trust, ensuring she would always be cared for. She continued to visit the farm often, helping with various tasks and spending time with the grandkids. It was clear that she had truly cared for my father, and in return, we embraced her as one of our own. As time passed, I found myself reflecting on the lessons my father had taught me, not just about life, but about handling adversity with grace. His decision not to expose Emily's affair during his lifetime, but instead to quietly make preparations for the future, had shown me the value of choosing peace over confrontation. He could have easily destroyed her reputation and caused a public scandal, but he had chosen to focus on what truly mattered: his family, his legacy, and the time he had left. With the legal matters settled and the trust fully in place, I turned my attention to the future of the farm. My father had always envisioned the land being passed down through generations, and I intended to make that dream a reality. We expanded the farm, brought in new animals, and began incorporating sustainable farming practices to ensure that it would thrive for years to come. The grandkids took an active interest in the farm's operations, and I could see that my father's love for the land was being passed down to them as well. One day, as I sat by the tree where my father used to watch the sunset, I felt a deep sense of peace. The farm had become more than just a place of work. It was a living reminder of my father's legacy. Every decision I made, from the way we ran the business to the way we nurtured the land, was guided by the lessons he had taught me. As for Emily and James, they became distant memories, reminders of a chapter in our lives that we had moved past. My father's decision to remove them from our lives had been the right one. We no longer spoke of them, and they had no place in the future we were building together as a family. The farm continued to flourish, and each year, our Christmas celebrations grew bigger and more joyous. My siblings, their spouses, and the grandkids all gathered at the farm, just as we always had. The family's connection to the land and to each other grew stronger with each passing season. The legacy my father had left behind wasn't just in the land or the trust, it was in the relationships he had nurtured, the values he had instilled in us, and the love he had shown throughout his life. Years later, as I stood by the tree once more, watching the sun set over the farm, I realized that my father's spirit would always be a part of this place. His legacy would live on, not just in the land or the family he had built, but in the lessons we had learned from him. He had taught us that love, loyalty, and integrity were the foundations of a meaningful life, and those values would continue to guide us for generations to come. In the end, my father's greatest gift wasn't the wealth or the land. It was the wisdom he had shared and the love he had given. We were his true legacy, and we would carry that with us always.